Welcome to this probably quite strange video, especially if you know what I normally do. I don't normally do tutorials, or guides, or whatever the fuck you can call this. But this will be a guide on how I make NPC, or how I make characters. Primarily, I personally use this for D&D, for role-playing games to make characters that my players get to interact with. But I can very easily see me using this also for making new player characters myself. If I wanted to ever write a book, I would probably also use something very similar to this to kind of set up just a lot of characters. Now 80% of this is really just stolen from Taking 20, from his guide to Why Your Villains Suck. However, his guide is, well, as the title suggests, it's for villains, while I've expanded mine to be more general. Originally I started using his guide for all NPCs, and I've done my own addition to it. So, how do I do this? Well, it's quite simple. For every NPC you answer, and when I say NPC it's just a character, for each character you just answer 5 questions. What's the character's fear? What's the character's flaw? What's the character's virtue? What's the character's goal? And what's the character's means to achieve their goal? So let's try to make this clear with a couple of examples. Let's begin with one of the most classic of all characters. One of the most classic of all villains, really. We take a wizard, and let's begin with the first question. What is the character's fear? This wizard fears death. What is the character's flaw? He's a prideful person. This leads to him not wanting to ever die. He thinks he deserves to not die. What is the character's virtue? Let's say zeal. He's zealous. He will pursue whatever he wants to. He is not just going to sit by and have other people do things for him. No, he's actually going to go out there himself. What is the character's goal? To become a lich. This would mean that he will no longer die, or at least he will no longer pass to the afterlife. What is the character's means to achieve their goal? Well, you can really make that anything. The one that immediately springs to my mind right now would be, he is a follower of Vecna. And with just these points, I have already kind of made a character that, well, has a certain way of doing things. He has a simple fear. A fear of death, so should something threaten him, he will run away. He is prideful, so he would probably like to monologue if they ever run into just a party. And they are zealous, so they will actually go out there and do stuff. This could make for a great reoccurring villain. They could come across him multiple times because he's zealous, he goes out there himself, so the party can come across him. And if it ever looks dicey for your villain, well, they have a fear of death, so if the fighting goes the wrong way for them, they will try to get away somehow, maybe always keeping one of their more powerful spells on reserve just so they can teleport away in an instance. Now, let's use it for a character that's not a villain. So I have a need for a character who is a captain on a ship. What would be this character's fear? Well, an interesting one could be losing their ship. They fear that they may lose their ship someday. What would be their flaw? I would say an interesting one could be lust. Not the purely sexual lust, but this lust for adventure, this lust to go out there, this lust to achieve things. They will take this action no matter what. They will be, well, stupid about it. What would be their virtue? Well, let's go with the first one. Humility. They are humble. They have this very earthly fear of losing their ship. And so they are humble. They are careful not to upset things that may be a danger to them. What would be their goal? Well, a good way to keep a ship safe is to be able to outrun any danger. So their goal could be to have the fastest ship on Earth. And then, what's the character's means to achieve their goal? For my world, for the world I have my campaign in, there is this city where a lot of inventions are being done. So he would be making money to pay for inventions that will help make his ship faster. Now, I just created a character that I think is quite interesting. A character that has temptations. They have this lust for experiences. But they are humble. They know that there are things that can easily beat them. They have something they will want to avoid at all costs. And they have a goal to move towards. And so, this is going to be a character in my game because, honestly, I think it's quite interesting. And let's end the video with kind of a fun, interesting little experiment. Let's roll randomly for their flaw and their virtue. Because, well, I'm going off the deadly sins and their counterparts for flaws and virtues. So, for flaws there's pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. And for the counter example virtues, there's humility, generosity, peace, zeal, justice, temperance, and purity. So, let's roll a d7. Of course, in reality a d7 doesn't exist, but that's the amazing thing about, well, computers. Because random number generators don't care about what is real. A 4. This means that this character has the flaw of sloth. Let's now roll a d6 to see what their virtue will be. And yes, a d6 because, well, in this case you can't both have the flaw of sloth and the virtue of zeal, because those two are, well, they're the opposites. A 2. The virtue of generosity. Now, this is, I think, quite an interesting character. He's a sloth, he's lazy, he doesn't want to do things. But he is generous. The type of character that I envisioned for this is kind of a king or a leader who isn't particularly caring about the whole leading thing, but he will kind of sometimes parade through town or just sometimes go places, and he will spend more money than he needs to. He will give to the poor. So if we're going with that type of character, this leader character who is slothful but generous, let's give him the fear of being overthrown. In this case, the fear doesn't directly lead to the flaw. Instead, the flaw is more a reason why the fear could come through. Now, for a villain, sloth is already a terrible flaw because it means that you have a villain that probably won't do a lot. But it could make for a great character that hires the heroes. I'm afraid this person is going to overthrow me. Please go check up on him and make sure that that isn't going to happen. And they will pay you handsomely because, well, they are generous. What is this character's goal? Let's say that they want a family. Currently they're pretty much living alone, they're not married, they don't have a husband or wife. What's their goal? To build a family. What's the character's mean to achieve this goal? Well, for the NPC example that I keep going with, this would make for a character that kind of hires the party because they have seen this nice lady at parties, but she lives in a far-off kingdom. Could you please deliver this letter in which this character invites the other character to come over? Depending on how dangerous the travel is, or kind of the bureaucracy of the place they are told to go to, this could be an adventure, or it could be very small. And it's all centered, or at least it begins in its centering, around this character, this... Well, I almost see him like this lovable idiot. He's a nice person, he's nice, he wants to do good to people, but he doesn't exactly do a lot. He just nicely enjoys their life. So this, in my opinion, is a good way to make NPCs, to make characters, by simply asking these 5 simple questions. What does the character fear? What's the thing in their life that they want to avoid? What is their flaw? Pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, lust. This can be the reason why they have their fear, or it could be the reason why their fear may manifest. What is their virtue? What kind of makes them redeemable, or what do they have that makes them help in avoiding their fears or achieving their goals? What are their goals? What do they want to achieve? What is their, or at least their current thing they are working towards? And what is the means they have for getting to that goal? And this can be big or small. For instance, the captain example. Their fear, it's very simple. They don't want their boat to sink. This is a goal that a lot of people could easily get behind, and it's not some overbearing problem unless there is a danger that pops up. Their flaw and virtue. They're simple, but they kind of give you a direction the character would move in certain situations. A goal. What motivates them to do the things they do? And means to achieve their goal. What is it that they do? These simple questions, I think, are great at prodding you into, well, making simple but fleshed out feeling characters. So yeah, that was my pretty much stolen guide to making characters. This has been Phoenix, saying farewell.